tomorrow, because it'll come through later tonight or tomorrow. If it's not super intuitive, then get on the phone, and if you can, and give me a call, or at least send me an email.
Yep.
And like send me that link as an email, the link you get, and I'll work through it with you to make sure it works for you.
All right.
I'll do what I can to make sure you can do what you need to do.
All right. Okay.
So we've got it's recording now.
Hi everybody, it's Christine Neville here. I'm doing today's presentation on engaging undergraduate nursing students in mental health care, utilising an online problem-based learning approach. This presentation is a collaboration between two academics from the University of Queensland, that being myself and Sandra Gertz. Sandra will be in the question and answer part of this presentation, as I will be away and I can't make that. So, but she's well informed about this project, was deeply involved, and will be able to really address any sort of questions that you may have in regard to it. So just as an introduction, I'd like to draw your attention to a report put out by Health Workforce Australia in 2012. And in that report they identified that there's going to be a workforce crisis in regard to nurses working in mental health care. And there's been a number of reasons as to why this has come about. And one of the primary reasons, which is affecting all specialties in nursing and particularly nursing itself, is that we do have an ageing workforce, and they expect a fair percentage of that workforce to retire in the next 10 to 15 years. And one of the problems is that we've had a minimal recruitment of graduate nurses into mental health nursing. And this can be put down to a number of reasons. Primarily it's that age-old negative attitudes, the ageism or the stigma that's attached to mental illness, particularly people with mental illness. And then this is reflected onto nurses that work into this particular area as well. It's not one of those sort of sexy areas that people want to work in, particularly graduate nurses. They're attracted to those higher profile areas of accident and emergency and paediatrics. So if we don't get them on graduating, I think it's important that we plant the seeds in the undergraduate program so that once they get all that high adrenaline area type of nursing out of their system, and when they're looking for something that's satisfying and rewarding, they'll look at somewhere like mental health care, where we deal with very complex issues and complex people. So there's been a number of authors that have said for a long period of time that the actual undergraduate programs don't prepare our graduates for a not necessarily a specialist career in mental health nursing, which would be very nice, but we don't prepare them enough even to look after people in sort of the general nursing areas who also have a mental illness. These people also sort of suffer from people's sort of stigmatised attitudes towards them. So in 2008, the federal government commissioned a task force to prepare a report on the mental health content in the pre-registration nursing courses. And this is a copy of the cover of that particular report. And what that told us was that they did review it nationally, so they looked at all the universities in Australia, looking at the type of education that they delivered. And what they found was there was a lot of variation in how mental health nursing was taught in undergraduate programs. There was a lot of variation in the amount and type of content that was included in these programs, particularly in relation to the amount of theory and also the amount of clinical placement time. And, you know, we can talk about that in a lot more detail as well, but we haven't got a lot of time today to go on about that. But clinical placements has always been a difficult issue for universities, trying to access enough clinical placements in the mental health areas so students can get exposure to that. And it's not only the amount of placements, but it's also the quality of those placements. And later on in some of my research results, that will you'll be able to identify what I'm talking about here from real life experiences of the students. So these are the recommendations made by that particular task force. They recommended that the actual amount of mental health content is increased in undergraduate programs, and that we get some sort of standardised formula about what that should look like. Strengthening mental health nursing leadership in the programs is also really important. This is not only having academic staff that have qualifications in mental health nursing, but also involving other leaders from industry in the programs so that they're relevant and they've got that evidence base as well underneath it. Increasing consumer participation is also another strategy that was recommended, and also, providing the funding to support curricular rebuilds, because it does take a lot of academic time to actually research it and then write it and also monitor it for quality, etc. So today's presentation is about a project that was started in 2008 by myself, Sandra, and another colleague, Stephanie Fox-Young, who's since retired. We were successful in getting a grant from the Commonwealth Department of Health and Ageing for $50,000 to enhance the mental health component in the undergraduate nursing and midwifery degrees here at the University of Queensland. And the University of Queensland also contributed $31,000 to that particular project. So what we did was we looked at the existing mental health course in the undergraduate program, NURS 2005. It runs in Year 2 of the Bachelor of Nursing program and also in the dual degree, the Bachelor of Nursing, Bachelor of Midwifery program. We were going to also work with the midwives in the Bachelor of Midwifery program in enhancing the content of their particular course that runs on mental health for mothers and babies and unborn babies. However, it was a brand new program and they were quite happy with what they had written in that particular program, and they, at that particular point in time, they wanted to continue what they were already doing and see how it went. So for this particular project, we scaled it back to look at mainly the Bachelor of Nursing. So we formed a reference group which consisted of academics, and we included undergraduate and postgraduate students in that reference group, mental health nursing clinicians and clinical leaders, consumers, carers, and representatives from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and sort of languages other than English groups as well. Other than the academics, the other people that sat on that particular reference group were all paid to come along and be part of that. So the idea behind it was to make the problem-based learning course that we had in existence here at the university, which was delivered face-to-face, to put that online. And that was for a couple of reasons. Mainly due to the way the course was, all the undergraduate programs are run here at the University of Queensland, is in that they're all problem-based learning. So we don't actually have lecturers that deliver the content to the students. They're actually facilitated by PBL tutors. And it's not necessarily people with mental health background that actually delivers the course content. So we thought that because these aren't inspirational people or people that have in-depth knowledge or even good experiences of working in this particular area, if we sort of took the primary teaching responsibility off them and put it online, it might have better outcomes for our students. We were keen to use popular media such as excerpts from literature, films, YouTube, have commentary from consumers and carers. Also, that's sort of across all the programs here at the University of Queensland. Because we're a research-intensive university, we embed the research evidence sort of thoroughly throughout our courses. Right from the word go, our students are well aware of level of evidence, and they're continuously reading research articles and providing comment on those. We also developed an asynchronous online discussion board so that people could post their self-directed learning activities. We included web-based multiple choice quizzes as part of the assessment, and we kept up the 2-hour face-to-face discussion of critical issues, and I'll talk about that further as well. So this project ran for 3 years, 2009, 2010, 2011. And after we piloted it in 2009, we kept modifying it according to the feedback that was given to the students. Our primary outcome measure was the student assessment of learning gains, and I've got the details of that particular tool. It collects qualitative and quantitative data, and it has a high internal consistency. So it was a relatively good tool to use for this particular exercise. We also held some focus groups for the teaching staff to get their input from an overall sort of view of what they thought of the project. We looked at student grades, and of course, because this is a research project, we had ethical approval from the University of Queensland. So here are some of the results. Table 1 from the SALG questionnaire, and what's presented here is the percentage of student responses in particular in relation to the particular questions. And you can see there we had a fairly good sample size across the 3 years we ran the project. Between 121 and 133 students responded each year. So overall, looking at this particular table, one of the most noteworthy observations from these results was the consistency of responses of students across the 3 years of the study. There was very little variation in the percentages of each category of the questionnaire, with the 2010 cohort showing slightly highly positive outcome than other years. But on the whole, it could be considered that the changes to the courses were received in a positive way, and the students found value in both the learning activities encountered and the ability to learn from the content of the course. Consistency was also shown in the qualitative components of the questionnaires, with students generally only including written responses when they felt strongly about a question, and therefore responses tend to either be clearly negative or clearly positive. So, what I'm saying there is they commented when they felt they had something very strong to say, either way. So, students were asked to rate how the activities of the course had influenced their learning. And you'll see their participation in the online discussion. Data was only collected for 2009 because when we reviewed the course in that pilot year, it showed that students and staff felt the workload was too high, and a decision was made for subsequent years to remove the online discussion. The PBL scenarios, the top one there, that was relatively well accepted by the students. 2009 was a little bit down because this was the first time they were exposed to this type of learning, and there was a small group of students that reacted quite negatively in response to this particular change. So, we learned from that we needed to really prepare the students when we were making any sort of change in the style of teaching that was taking place. And there were some issues in relation to the online software and consistent access to the internet, but we were able to solve those as they sort of arose, and in subsequent years they weren't a problem. They did like the face-to-face discussion, and this was also important because of the students at the same time were participating in clinical practice, and this gave them a forum to discuss any sort of issues that might have been arising in their clinical practice. And some of the qualitative comments was, the face-to-face discussion helped me develop skills in discussing research, topic material and application of the case material, and felt that the face-to-face discussion was beneficial because they had to contribute to the session to be graded, therefore had to do weekly research which assisted learning. We thought that the most surprising results on the table were those pertaining to the online exam, because this was the one thing that the students weren't happy about, because normally they did, at the end of the semester they did a paper-based exam, and this one was a sort of a non-supervised random drop of questions at the end of each week. But in the end, they quite liked this, and instead of just being seen as an examination, they saw it as a tool to aid their learning. In Table 2, we sort of examined the engagement of students in learning the content of the course. And once again, the responses were consistent across the 3 years, with the 2010 cohort showing the most positive gains. There does not seem to be an obvious reason why this group engaged in this style of learning, but we'd learned from the previous year about that course introduction day and really giving a lot of the information to the students about this particular course. And we felt in that sort of introduction orientation session that sort of prepared them well, therefore they showed more positive attitudes to this different style of learning. So these results show that most students believe they had gained much knowledge in relation to mental health nursing. The fourth question related to how students would apply this knowledge in other area nurses. Generally, it would appear that students believed they could apply this knowledge, but these responses were not as clearly positive as was in the other 3 questions. Some of the qualitative data reflected the positive gains experienced by students, with one student saying overall course provided very helpful insights to mental health conditions and management treatment. Good insight into how easily mental health issues can arise. I have better understanding of how to deal with patients in medical surgical wards with a mental illness. I was actually able to understand the idea of mental health and understand what people were going through. In Table 3, we evaluated what was the influence of learning gains on the attitudes of students towards mental health nursing. These questions included interest in further study in this area of nursing and whether there was interest in working in mental health nursing. The first significant finding was an overall positive response to an increase in the enthusiasm for mental health nursing, and these results were once again relatively consistent for the 3 years, with slightly more positive responses in 2010. And this trend continued for each of the questions in this section of the survey. It was interesting and encouraging to see the positive responses with regards to undertaking further study or working in mental health. In addition to this, most students believe they would apply this knowledge in other situations. So, but once again, as I said before, with the clinical placements that sort of ran concurrently to the delivery of the theory, even though students felt that they had enjoyed the course, they had gained some knowledge, when they wrote things like about their clinical placement, worst placement, underlined many times for emphasis. Prac was terrible. I sat in the corner and did nothing. I saw 3 patients over 4 shifts, 2 in 1 day. So once, you started getting, the clinical practice not following up with the theory, or the theory not supporting the clinical practice, that became very difficult to sort of regain the interest of those students in looking at mental health care as a career option. So just in discussing the results of this particular research, when we're making changes to the curriculum, there's those two key stakeholder groups. You know, you've really got to look at what their concerns may be and how you're going to address those particular concerns that they may have. The online delivery of this program did represent a big change in how education was delivered in the School of Nursing and Midwifery, and staff verbalised many concerns about their ability to facilitate this course, particularly as many of them believed that they didn't have that, the technological knowledge or skills to deliver this particular program. And the students also, although they're quite adept at using online courses, etc., if they don't run properly, for example, if the links don't work or some sort of technological issue occurs, that's when they get quite frustrated with this type of education. We found that combining the online and face-to-face aspects of this particular program were very successful, and this sort of gave the students some face-to-face contact as well as their online learning, and they participated really well in both aspects. As I said, the asynchronous online discussion was discontinued after 2010, mainly due to workload issues, but it was a very successful education strategy. Students participated a lot in this. The staff enjoyed reading the contributions of the students, and so it's something that even though we had to discontinue, it was unfortunate. What was their influence on the attitudes and future job intentions? While we've got a lot of emphasis being placed on the importance of mental health in undergraduate courses, this influence of sort of attitudes that they bring into this particular area is a real challenge for us. I think when we involve consumer and carers in commentary, or if they come and talk to the students, that really helps break down the barriers. Through this course, we did have commentary from carers and consumers, and it led to comments from students like, "I think it gave me a good understanding of what mental health patients go through. I realised a lot of things that I wasn't aware of." And another student said, "Dramatic change, more deeper understanding of mental health treatment, etc." So in conclusion, this was a longitudinal study. One of the limitations is, though, that it's only been conducted in one university, so its generalisability is really limited. And plus, we have no long-term follow-up strategies post-graduation to see whether this particular program in this, this particular course in this Bachelor of Nursing program actually had some influence once they left university and began in the workforce. But overall, from an educational perspective, we had very positive outcomes, but keeping in mind that any, the development of any online courses is very expensive, developing them is very labour intensive, and so you've got to have staff offline to be able to do that. And the key thing to any educational program is the staff motivation to actually deliver the course, and whether people are passionate about this particular area of practice and whether they're keen to carry through. So thank you very much for your attention today, and I'll hand over to Sandra now to answer any of your questions.
Okay, so that stopped.
That's right. That's good. So did it go for 14 minutes?